Hey guys, it's Sam and welcome to my December wrap-up, the last wrap-up of 2020. We did it. I read 7 books this month, and this month is actually kind of like a mediocre to, at times, bad reading month. Not the worst, I don't have any 1 stars, but just kind of like meh all the way through, with one exception. But there's not going to be any gushing really in this video, so let's get into it. This month I had a lot of focus on finishing up some series, so I finished 2 series, and that's going to take up a lot of this video. So the first is the Falconer Trilogy. I read the second 2 books in the series, The Vanishing Throne and The Fallen Kingdom by Elizabeth May. I have done a full spoiler-free review on this series, and I didn't read them back to back, but I wanted to talk about them all at once because what I have to say about them is what I kind of had to say about the series. This is a YA fantasy series that is basically Buffy the Vampire Slayer in Scotland with fae in like a steampunk kind of setting is really what this is. These second 2 books get much more into the fae world and a lot of the fae lore. As I mentioned in my review, this is much more of like the traditional fae, the Unseelie and the Seelie courts and some of that kind of stuff. And this series was like fun and fine. The Vanishing Throne I gave 3.5 stars to, and The Fallen Kingdom I gave 3. There are trigger warnings in this one for death of a loved one and possession, and there's just kind of like general like fantasy violence in both. But these were just kind of forgettable for me. I liked a lot of the world building elements, but the plot was just like so fast paced, which I think is a lot of fun, but ultimately left me not feeling super connected to the characters. Like the romance, which is a pretty big focus, but I wasn't super connected to, and the villains were lackluster for this kind of setting. I think they could have been way cooler. So is it a fun fae series if you're into fae? Yeah. Was it a new favorite for me? No. I then read Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a booktube darling, so I'm sure you've heard of it. This is an adult contemporary romance featuring a male-male pairing. One is the son of the first female president of the United States, set in an alternate timeline, like 2016 there was an alternate person who was a woman who won the election. And the British prince, also not any like real characters. This is again like an alternate reality with like different people, so they weren't actually messing with anything like historical or like real people or whatever. And they start out kind of as like rivals, nemesis kind of thing, but everyone kind of implies that this is like an enemies to lovers, and like it sort of is, but they aren't enemies for very long at all. They basically have to do this like campaign to convince everyone in the media that they're friends, and they become friends like very quickly, and then they actually like get into a situationship relationship like fairly quickly. And I want to say that because I think a lot of people go into this thinking it's going to be a slow burn, and it's not. So that's a whole thing. I don't hold that against the book, but just if you go in thinking this is going to be like an angsty enemies to lovers, it's not really that. This has triggers for outing, drug use, and sexual harassment. That is off page but is mentioned. And this was just fine. I expected to really love this, and I talk about this in a video I did this month about escapism that I'll link on the screen. I mentioned that video and I go more in depth in that video, so please look there about what I'm talking about. But my escapism isn't this kind of like contemporary setting escapism, and so this didn't hit for me in the way that it did for a lot of people. I know a lot of people loved this escapism wise. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with the book. It just didn't hit that way for me because it actually made me kind of sad that our world isn't like that, and that's not really what I wanted out of this. But I know a lot of people, it gave them hope and made them happy, and that's fine. So this was cute. There's like some political things going on, and the couple is very like cute, and I like rooted for them, but ultimately it wasn't a book that I'm really remembering a lot of since I've read it, and it was just okay. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then the other series that I finished that, again, I didn't read back to back, these are all kind of interspersed, but I want to talk about them all as one thing, and that is the Imperial Trilogy by Anne Leckie. And this is an adult science fiction series. I read the first book like years ago, and then I've finished up these 2, and this is such an interesting series. This was probably the highlight of the month for me. I think I'm gonna still do like a spoiler-free series review on this. I think I might have done a review for the first book, but I do plan on doing a series review. But this follows a main character who is an ancillary, which means that she used to be part of a ship. She's not like a cyborg or anything, but she sort of, I guess, can be in some ways, but she basically is the consciousness of a ship, and when she was a ship, she used to be one of like many different bodies that made up this ship, in addition to the ship AI. So she's like an AI in a person's body, and she's the leftover of the ship that has since been destroyed. You find that out before the beginning, at the very beginning of book 1. And this is her navigating this world and the political machinations of this world, and a lot of just AI discussion here. These books do have triggers for mentions of suicidal ideation, drug use, and sexual harassment. But as a series, this is said to be like a space opera, but when I think of space opera, I think of way more action than these actually get. These are like political machination almost slice of military political life and somebody who's very ingrained in some of the things that are going on, some of the drama, and how different relationships affect politics. I know this sounds like very vague and like high level, and it kind of is in times, and is a very big discussion on what makes a person, what is an AI, who is a like person and a citizen, because in this world the Rocked all call people like citizens who are like part of the system and stuff, and it's like an imperial nation, basically, imperial planet, imperial system, whatever. So there's just a lot of discussion about who's a person, who has importance, all of that in here, and it's done in a very slow way. So like the second book in particular is super slow, like not a lot of like actiony stuff happens, but then you realize throughout the whole series like how all the pieces come together and what the series is trying to say. So this is much more of a like thematic sci-fi series and isn't going to be for everyone. If you like your sci-fi way more fast-paced and like battles and all that stuff, you're not going to really get that here. There's a few of those scenes here and there, but this is much more about like communities of people and how people interact and what makes a person. Anyway, it was very cool. I gave both books 4 stars. I think the whole series I gave 4 stars, so it's very much a 4-star series for me. It's not gonna live in my feelings as far as like the characters and stuff, but the like themes and what it was talking about are very interesting. Oh, and I didn't even mention that everyone in this series is like, they're not necessarily non-binary, but everyone is referred to in this as a she, as they use the she pronoun. All the people in the Rocked use she, but then they will point out sometimes in the writing that people from other nations that aren't under them use different pronouns, and then they'll kind of say like a different pronoun, but you don't actually know the gender of what we would define as gender of like any of these characters. At least in these second 2 books, they don't use any descriptors really to tell you like this is a biological man or woman or whatever. Like it's a non-issue thing, so it's almost like people are non-binary since everyone has the same pronoun. It's very interesting. It's very interesting what they do with like, again, gender and everything else. So I highly recommend this series if you want like a more philosophical sci-fi take. I think if you like the Becky Chambers series, the Wayfarer series, but you want even more like political stuff going on, you probably would dig this. But if you're looking for just like pew pew space battles, you're probably not gonna like this. And then the last books I read this month were both contemporary adult Christmas stories. And my Christmas books this year were not very successful for me. They, one, didn't feel very Christmassy, which is kind of fine because I wasn't really in the Christmas mood this year, just wasn't feeling the holidays at all. Not in like a grumpy Scrooge Grinch way, but just like, I don't really care, I'm very neutral about it. But these books didn't help because they weren't super Christmassy in my opinion, but let me talk about them. The first is In a Holidays by Christina Lauren. This is the most Christmassy of the two. There's a trigger warning in here for a car accident. This was actually our House Salt Book Club pick for this month, so I will leave our live show on the screen for you guys to check out our thoughts on it. Pretty much everyone agreed on this book. But this is, like I said, an adult contemporary romance, and it follows a girl who's stuck kind of in like a Groundhog Day time loop where she just had Christmas and it was kind of disastrous, and she ended up kissing her childhood friend who's the brother of her actual like a lifelong crush, and like messed everything up and blah blah blah, and she gets a reset and she goes back to the holiday and keeps kind of having to relive it a few different times, but then eventually ends up kind of going through the whole holiday and like changing things and wanting to be happy and whatever. And it's cute. This is a whole bunch of people that are family friends at this like winter cabin, I think in Colorado or something, and they're doing like Christmassy things, and it's cute. But it was very just like whatever, like it just kind of washed over you. We said in the live show there's probably too many characters, we weren't super connected to the romance, but it was like fine, it was cute, like I pulled for it, but it was also like it happened fairly easily. Like it was just like a fluffy Christmassy story, and there were some things that we would have improved upon for it, but like it was fine. So I ended up giving that one 3 stars. Not my favorite Christina Lauren. Didn't expect it to be because the On Honeymooners is like top tier. And then the last book that I read this month was Mistletoe and Mr Wright by Sarah Morgenthaler. This is the second book in the like Moose Spring series, but whenever I read romance books, I never really consider them like books in a series, even though they technically are, but whatever. This is following Lana, who is the best friend of the girl in the first book, and she has recently bought the town of Moose Springs, which is like an Alaskan tourist town, and the town like hates her for that. And they're just always like, get out of here, you like outsider, blah blah blah. And then the guy, Rick, is the local pool hall bar owner, and he's just like an Alaska local sweet man, and they have a very like instant crush. She's been going to this town for a while, he's known her for a while, and then they finally start forming like a holiday fling type thing. This does have triggers for an off-page car accident involving loved ones. also sexual harassment, and just like some drunken accidents. I didn't really know how to phrase this, but there's like some drinking involved and then like accidents happening. There's references to like drunk driving, not the characters, but like there's a lot of just like drunk driving happening around them, or like them drinking and like having dangerous equipment. So that's just like a thing if you are like pretty sensitive to that, that I wanted to mention because it's something that stuck out to me. But anyway, this book was just okay. The thing with this series is they're about 400-page books and they're too long. They need to be edited down. I think that they have like such potential and such heart, and I really do like the series. I'm gonna keep reading in it. There's another book coming out in January in this series because I like this like Alaska town romances. The guys are usually just like big old like teddy bears. Rick is like a cute sweet bean. He has a hedgehog that he dresses up that is not in the book enough for it being 400 pages. And that's the thing, is these books have like too many plot points that just get like mixed around, so it becomes like plot soup. And if that just got tightened up and it was focused more on the couples, I think it would be better. But it's still fine. Like I still end up kind of pulling for this couple. They weren't my favorite. I think I want to like the couple in book 3 the most, but we'll see. They use pet names a little too much in this series too. In the first book, the guy always called the main girl Zoe Bear, and in this book the girl calls everyone Dearest, and if you took a shot every time that they said these nicknames, you would be dead. So that's like a pet peeve of mine, but ultimately if you just tighten it up and got rid of some of the extraneous plot points and focus more on the couple, I think it'd be good. This is really good for people who like the couples to get together earlier in their books, because these couples end up like dating fairly quickly. Like they get together pretty quick. It's not a slow burn thing. So if you like seeing couples and their dynamic play out when they're together for a lot longer, you'll like this. And there's also fade to black sex scenes, which like at this point, I know it's crazy, the end of 2020, and I'm gonna say this, I don't mind sex scenes anymore in romance books. I know. Who is she? But I've gotten to the point where when I read these books, I'm kind of like, are you not gonna give me a sex scene? Like, and they don't. So if you are preferring fade to black sex scenes in your romance, you'll like this. I don't dock points for that by any means, but it's just one of those things that it's so weird to read like an adult romance these days and not have an actual sex scene, but whatever. But this one felt less Christmassy. There are some like Christmas references, but it didn't feel as Christmassy. So if you want to read this outside of the Christmas season, I don't think you would feel like you are watching a Christmas movie in July, which I know plenty of people do, but some people don't like doing that. I think you could read this at any point in the winter and be fine. But this one I ended up giving 2.5 stars, right in the middle. I don't hate it. I obviously had some complaints about it, but it was fine. I'm gonna continue in the series. There's something about it that I still kind of like, even though they need editing. But that is it for my December wrap up. So comment below, let me know what you read in December and what you liked the most. Also, all of my like end of the year wrap ups, favorites, favorite couples of 2020, all disappointing reads, all of that stuff, goal wrap up, new goals, is all gonna be in the next coming weeks. So like every video from here on out until like almost the end of January is gonna be like a big wrap up or like new goals type video. So you're gonna get all that content now. I'm so excited about it. You are welcome. I can't wait to talk to you guys about all the books. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.